Pick a move in the ring. You can hit me with the words you fling.
All right, let's have a little look at this. It wouldn't be a post-fight podcast if we didn't talk about Conor McGregor, right? Yeah. Okay. Latest update on Conor McGregor is that Dana White has said he actually turned down a title fight, the short notice fight that Justin Gaethje took at UFC 249, it looks like. So is this Dana throwing Conor under the bus, John? Or is it Dana playing games? Who's wrong, who's right? It's always so difficult with those two, isn't it, to know who's telling the truth.
Oh, it's just mind games. Conor's been doing this with Dana White for the past couple of years, and Dana's been doing it back. You know, Dana always shows respect to Conor McGregor. The reason why is Conor McGregor has made him just buckets and buckets and buckets of cash, right? So if a guy comes in with the opportunity and does that for you, you're going to give them respect. But, you know, moving forward in the future, Dana's going to play the games like Conor, and Conor's going to retire. And Chael Sonnen made a good point in one of his videos, even though I feel like Chael Sonnen is kind of getting weird now. Like he's
fake news.
Yeah, he's becoming like this fake news channel on his YouTube. But, you know, I always liked his videos, but now it's kind of like changing, and he's becoming the CNN of MMA. But yeah, he mentioned it on his podcast that who retires at 6 a.m. in the morning or 5 a.m. in the morning? And that's a great point. You know what I mean? That is a great point. Like, why would you be up at that late at night just to tweet that you're going to retire just randomly, you know, after Amanda Nunes defends her title? And it just shows, it kind of like gives you a glimpse of like Conor just playing games with the UFC. That's what the way I look at it as. I don't see Conor retired. And I see Conor going to fight again, but he's going to want the money that he deserves and that he wants. And if he doesn't get it, then he's going to go somewhere else. And I could see him boxing too. You know, you never know, because Paradigm is getting deep into the boxing world too. So we might see that sometime in the future, maybe in Macau. Who knows?
Oh, I'd love that.
Well, there's actually a funny video going around on Instagram and Twitter and whatnot with Dana White having a talk with Snoop Dogg, where he's talking about how much he respects Conor McGregor for choosing not to take fights and always saying, I want to get paid. And it's quite funny now. He's very much changed his tone when Conor wants to pick fights. And as we see with Dana, respect him as a businessman. Come on, man. You do flip-flop more than Nick in the pub, you know. Nick's always got his flip-flops on, so Dana flip-flops more often.
Insulting my amazing dress sense, yeah. Well, I just wanted to point out those quotes because I think Dana's got a bit of a point. He says he offered Conor that spot, right? Let's presume Dana's telling the truth. And then Conor came back and said, I'm not a replacement fighter. I'm not going to do it. But Conor spent all of January, February, March saying, I'm going to slide in and replace Khabib or Tony when one of them falls out. That fight's not going to happen. I'll be there and then I'm going to beat Khabib. So you can't have it one way and the other, right?
Exactly. Conor should come back out in the next couple of days on Twitter to respond to these allegations, and who knows if he's going to tell the truth or not. But I could see Conor saying that, though. You know, if the UFC came and said, hey, take this late notice fight against Tony Ferguson, which is a dangerous matchup for him, and him saying like, man, I'm not a replacement fighter. It's like him saying in a manly way, like, I'm not gonna take a fight against that guy on short notice. It's just saying it like not a replacement fighter, and it's kind of true. You know, like, he's not a replacement fighter. He's the biggest name in the sport. You know, who is the biggest name in the sport that takes short notice fights? Nobody. There's no big names in the sport that's just going to hop in on 3 weeks or 4 weeks notice. It doesn't happen at that level of the sport, because every fight, every win is so important, you know, especially for your pockets. And that's where everybody's looking at right now. It seems like now everything that we talk about is about money now. It's just like money everywhere. And it's kind of getting old, you know, but it's the reason why we're talking about it is because the fighters deserve more money. And I feel like we can't do nothing about it. You know, we could talk about it, but it's not like we're in the boardroom, you know, where we're like protesting in front of that's what the fighters should do. They should be protesting in front of the Apex or the UFC headquarters or something. You know what I mean? Like, draw some attention to it a little bit more. And did you guys see the interview with yesterday when he announced Fight Island? He did an interview with First Take on ESPN, right? And one of the guys on there, I forgot his name. He was trying to ask Dana about the pay scale, and man, Dana's so well trained in responding to like criticism or like any type of question. Dana can divert, you know, with his answers and his responses. He's just become this like amazing speaker, and he could do it with like dropping F-bombs and all that.
Well, you said Conor can't have it both ways. The only person in MMA who can have it both ways is Dana White. I mean, this is a man who contradicts himself almost on a weekly basis nowadays.
Well, I saw everyone talking about this. I haven't seen it yet, so I just want to check it out.
That they were more than happy to sign less than a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the Masvidal and Jones are.
This is the one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Explain away, but my history in labor unions and sports in particular kind of makes me a little biased on this particular side. But if it were just those two guys, then I feel like I could get on board and understand your explanation. And I obviously understand how businesses work, but there's a long history of issues with the labor in UFC not feeling that they are getting just payment or the treatment that they deserve. So can you speak to the long history rather than the specific individuals?
Does anybody feel like they make too much money? Nobody does. These guys just listen. If we were talking about a thing where, you know, these guys had old contracts from 3 years ago, and it's like, come on, that was 3 years ago that I did this deal. They signed these less than a year ago. Right. This was months ago. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but we're in a pandemic right now, and all the sports are going. Oh, by the way, every other sport out there is arguing over money right now. I haven't laid off one employee. I haven't asked any of my fighters to take less money. And you don't hear me out here crying about, no, I don't get any gates. I don't have this. You don't hear me crying about anything. I'm running my business. I'm paying everybody. And right now, if you think it's easy to be a business owner right now, here and today, you are right out of your mind, okay? Because there's never been a harder time to do business than right now. Guess what? I'm pulling it off.
Well, you can't say you're not crying anymore. You just said it's a hard time for business owners. But
Well, oh my God. Dana is becoming an expert at that, like Chris was saying. Yeah. He seems to have the ready-made responses. I think he knew he was going to get asked about this.
Oh, he just totally deflected as he always does. I mean, let's be honest, he can say that, but I mean, in almost every other walk of life, you do have the right to go and renegotiate your contract with your boss. And your boss might tell you to leave or fire you, but then you're free to go and get another contract anywhere. The problem is, right, I can't understand how you can have a contract and be an independent contractor, but I don't want to go into all the pay stuff again. I feel like we're flogging the dead horse right now.
Yeah, we did a little bit of that last time, didn't we? John, it's definitely a lot of pressure starting to ramp up on Dana, isn't it? It's been a while since he got repeated questions on this subject from major outlets. You know, I suppose it's you do a deal with the devil when you sign with ESPN because that's a serious news organization and they're going to ask hard questions. They're not always going to just give you free layups, right?
Yeah, and he knew that when he laid in bed with ESPN, that ESPN's not just going to sit back and let him do what he wants to do. Fox did that, right? But ESPN's not that type of animal. ESPN is bigger than the UFC, bigger than any sport. And they're going to ask him the questions. But I felt like that analyst, he wasn't ready. He didn't know everything about what was going on. He just kind of was thrown a couple questions and he said it in his own particular way. And Dana White was ready for that. And just bang, he hit it out the park. Looked like Barry Bonds, in the World Series. But Dana, he's good. He's good at responding to certain questions. But he also sprinkles in the truth too, right? If you look at the other leagues, they're worried about gates and asking their players to take less money. And he's right. But then at the same time, he says, I haven't told anybody to take less money. But if you listen to Jorge Masvidal, he says that Dana White or the UFC wants him to take less money for his next fight against Usman if he actually signed to fight Usman. But, I don't know who's telling the truth, right? It's like, is it Jorge or is it Dana White? I have no idea. But Dana is he's a master at that now. And it's going to be fun to see what happens in his next interview with probably Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. What do the Trump fans say triggered. He looks a little triggered, doesn't he? He's cracking a little bit. Chris, do you see him? Dana's normally very composed, but his last few press conferences, he's just been going on these rambling rants against the media, now against the guys asking for more money. I haven't seen Dana like this for a long time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is probably the most pressure he's been under, probably going back to the early days of Zuffa. I mean, you do look at it, and I mean, you can go on about the gate, and there's no gate, but you have to think the gate only makes up 12% of revenue. We've gone over this multiple times before. I mean, just pay them more. That's all anyone really wants. And I don't know if any of you listened to Joe Rogan last night. He had
who?
I think Mark Schultz, Dave Schultz. He had on the podcast, the comedian anyway, and they had about a 10-15 minute talk on UFC pay. And if you actually listen to what Joe Rogan said, and he's good friends with Dana, he was a lot more reasonable. And his whole idea behind it was just that other organizations need to rise up so there's more competition. But I just think they need to really form a union, get better pay. Hopefully Masvidal, Diaz, Conor, John Jones union can start and get something together.
Yeah, it seems like things are happening in the world, aren't they? With this pandemic, everyone's just questioning things now a bit more than maybe they were before. You know, the structures are coming down, the order is being reorganized. We have all these movements now sweeping across the US and across the world, protesting social injustice. Do you feel, John, that this is the moment that a union could happen, or are we still just dreaming?
We're just still dreaming. If they were going to do it, it would be a perfect time to do it. But it would have been the perfect time to do it when the pandemic had just started, when they were scrambling to find a location to do the show. If the fighters would have came out and said nobody's fighting, everybody's sitting out, then the UFC would have no choice but to start to pay the fighters more, right? But they didn't do that, and I don't see that ever happening. I feel like every fighter is an individual, and to have a union, you have to be a group, right? And a lot of these fighters, they don't want to be grouped in with other fighters. They want to be by themselves, and that's the problem with the union of, in fighting. So the only option you have is what? The Ali Act, right? What they have in boxing, and hopefully they could get something similar.
I think the Ali Act, or I think the only other way you could do it is when you look at someone like Paradigm or Ali Abdelaziz, I've mentioned before. If you have someone who really has a roster of stars, then probably Ali Abdelaziz probably does it on some sort of level anyway, where he collectively bargains for all his stars at the same time. But really, they could do with someone like Ali Abdelaziz starting a union. I think he'd be the perfect guy for it, but then he'd probably have a conflict of interest with his management team, and there's not that much money in running a union.
Well, might be getting Ali on the show. We're trying to, because we're sending him 15 copies of the SCMP newspaper article about him over to Las Vegas. So hopefully Ali jumps on, and maybe we can ask him what his thoughts on this situation are, but it could be a while away, because I think it takes about 3 months for the mail to get to America from Hong Kong at the moment. Anyway,
Can we send a Boost Fight t-shirt?
Yeah, I'll send him one. And definitely. He'll probably away, but whatever. Yeah. I don't know where it is. I need to send John one. I don't. Chris, you have one. Where is it? Why aren't you wearing it now? Come on.
I have to actually. But,
I'll take one in blue. I'll take one in blue.
I'm thinking of getting another design made of blue, yeah, but the logo is have to be redesigned, but whatever.
Hey guys, Sasha Platnikoff here, letting you know to tune in to SCMP Post Fight for all your weekly martial arts news.